Hi Kim, thank you for joining me on the podcast. How are you doing?
I'm great, Ethan. Thank you. You?
Yeah, I'm fine, thank you. So
Good.
you've had a career in the music business as merchandise seller, tour manager, troubleshooter. You've done a lot. We'll go right back to the start though. When did you
Uh-huh.
first have a passion with music?
When I bought my very first single when I was 4 years old.
Really?
Um, yeah, it was Manfred Mann, and it was 54321, and that was my very first single that I bought. I loved music from the beginning. Always loved it. But my mum kind of did something really crafty on me. I thought I was a really good singer. Growing up, I'd stand with the hairbrush, do the whole thing. And she bought me a mini tape recorder and I taped myself and I was like, oh my God, that's so and it was bad. So I tried. I really did try. I even joined a choir at high school. And it was quite sad because they were short on numbers. So they actually asked if I would mime. So I stood in the choir and mimed. Um, so then I thought, okay, this is not going to work. I'll try a musical instrument. But I have learned throughout my life that I'm not the most patient of people. So the practice and everything, I was just like, no, I wanted instant gratification of like, yes, I'm a really good guitar player or something. And that didn't happen. So I guess it wasn't intentional. Getting a career in music was never intentional. I was actually training to be a swimming instructor when I left high school, and that was just a course that was one night a week. And I'd swum since I was younger, so it was okay. But the careers advisor then in those days actually told me that being a girl, a really good career for you would be in a shop. And I was like, but I don't want to be in a shop. And he was like, but a nice shop. So I guess like doing merchandising was kind of, yeah, okay. I ticked that box in the end. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Kind of
Yeah,
full
it
circle,
was,
then, really.
yeah, it was. I don't know. It was just, I was always in the right place at the right time. Lucky, I guess, doing that. But then I'm a great believer in whatever's meant to be is meant to be, so I am one of those. And I think that's just come with age.
Well,
But
you, oh, sorry, I'm going to say you mentioned your careers advisor said you should be working in a shop, which is pretty like, what's the word? Not well, it is sexist, but there's
oh yeah.
like that's the way it should be. Do you know what I mean?
The thing with that is that was the thing in those days. Girls were not even allowed to do woodwork or metal or anything like that. You had to do cookery. It was domestic science. You didn't have the choice. And most of my friends and the people I was at school with, the girls were doing secretarial things, which would never have been dreamed of nowadays. It was just the norm. It was the way it was. Women were not supposed to do certain jobs. And I always remember my very first tour. At the end of it, the tour manager said to me, how did you like it? Did you enjoy it? Was it fun? And I was like, yeah, I loved it. I love selling t-shirts. It was great fun. And he just said, would you do it again? I'm like, in a heartbeat. But then I said, but actually, I want your job, and he looked at me, he went, girls don't do tour management because there weren't any. They just didn't did it, do it. It was, I guess, sort of dangerous in a way in those days because it was all cash related. There was no money transfers over, a click of a button or anything like that. you'd sit in some dodgy office in the back of a venue, and you'd be like, counting out thousands and thousands of pounds or dollars. The most I ever carried with me was $750,000 in cash. So, and I had it gaffer taped to I put it in an envelope, separated it all, and I made this money belt with gaffer tape and just taped it around my waist. And everybody just thought I'd put on like an extra stone overnight. But it was the only way to carry it. Or we carry it in supermarket carrier bags because, again, times were different. A woman walking down the road with a couple of Sainsbury's carrier bags, nobody batted an eyelid. They had no idea that I could have £50,000 in there at the time, So yeah, it was so different. And I guess that's why they didn't allow women or didn't want women to do it. There was another instance. The first time I was asked to tour manage in America, I was asked what piece I wanted to carry. And I was like, what do you, naive as anything, like, what do you mean by piece? And they were like, well, what do you use? Do you use a Magnum or a what? And I'm like, that's Magnum PI. That's got nothing to do with me. And I'm like, you can't be serious. And they were like, well, yeah, we can. Tour managers were allowed to carry guns. So which one do you carry? And I was just like, none. So trust me, if somebody comes up at me with a gun and says, give me your money, I'm sorry, but I'm just going to give it to them. Because by the time I've got a gun organized and like try to shoot it, I'd miss anyway. And I'd be dead already because they'd be a lot quicker. So yeah, so it was just different. I did go to a guy that lived in the village not far from me who did martial arts training. And it was 2 days before I left, or a couple of days before I left. I went to see him and I said, look, I've been asked what kind of piece I want to carry in America, but I'm not doing it. Can you teach me how to do some judo or karate or some sort of martial arts? And he was like, yeah, of course I can. We run a course every week. I said, no, you don't understand. I'm leaving on Tuesday. And he was like, no, I can't do that. But he just gave me some self-defense things. And one thing I did carry, which is kind of strange, is I always carried a pepper spray on me.
All right.
Just in case. And I never used it at all or ever did. And he just gave me the word of advice that if you get attacked, don't say anything, just shout fire. Because if you shout fire, everybody will come running. Shout anything else and everybody will run away. So
yeah.
So yeah. Yeah,
So
it's so different.
you mentioned your first tour. That was with Elvis Costello and The Attractions. How did that come about?
Through a lie. Through a big fat lie. I was very naive. I was only 19. I was not worldly wise at all. As like I said, I grew up in a village that was known for its lettuce and its tomato growing. That was it. So I had listened to Elvis Costello. I'd seen him a couple of times, and I was madly and madly in love with Steve Naive out The Attractions. I was going to marry him. Like you hear these young girls falling in love with their pop stars and everything, but I was going to marry Steve Naive. And I was so fortunate enough that in the Christmas of 1978, I was in America. I was in Dayton, Ohio, not a very glamorous place, but Dayton, Ohio, on a school exchange trip. And basically, they were on TV. So all of the family and everybody were so interested in who is this Elvis Costello and the music that I was into at that time. So we all sat down and watched Saturday Night Live. Now, Saturday night, again, things were so different. There was no internet. There was none of this. People in this country, and most of them, well, yeah, virtually everybody had never heard of Saturday Night Live. So I watched them over there, and I came back home, and we went to see them in January at Preston Guildhall, which is just down the road from me. And my friend felt the same way about Elvis Costello as I did about Steve Naive. Two young girls, we were going to marry them both, live next door to each other, be happily ever after. And so we went to the pub and we had a few drinks for courage. And I said, I'm going to walk straight up to the stage and I'm going to tell them that I was with them while they filmed Saturday Night Live. And that's what I did. And this guy was like, I didn't know he was a tour manager at the time. He was just like, really? Gosh, that's who in Preston would know that, for one, and so this must be true. He said, come back after the show's finished. So I did. My friend by then had chickened out. She'd gone to get the bus home. And I knew I had like half an hour till the last bus home. So I went, and he was like, they're back, come backstage. They're really, looking forward to meeting you again. And I'm like, again? I've never met them once, but So we went backstage and they'd already left and gone to the hotel, which was across the road. So he took me there and he said, they're in the bar. We'll go and meet them. We went up to the bar and they were all sat around this round table. He got me a chair and he sat me down right in the middle of it. And then he suddenly realized after about 5 or 10 minutes that they had no idea who I was. I had never met them before. And so he said to me, like, come with me. I want to talk to you for a minute. So, but, I was okay with that because my dream had been met. And so we stood up and he was like, you don't know them. They don't know you. This was a big fat porky and I can't believe you've got one over on me. And then he said, but do you want to come on the rest of the tour? Now, this is when it gets a little bit dark. I didn't realize what was going on because I was so naive. So I was like, well, I don't know because I'm going to have to go home and ask my mum, right? So he was a bit like, oh, okay. So I went back home and he called me the next day and my mum spoke to him. She was wise enough to know that if she'd have said no outright, I would have gone anyway. Because that was the time, she would have got up the next morning, the window would have been open in my bedroom and I'd have gone. So she gave me some money and she made sure I had my own hotel room for the rest of the tour. It was only 1 week left, so it wasn't like major, it was like five nights. So she'd done that for me. And I met him that very first, like I went down to Bristol and he again was waiting for me in the hotel bar. Got there and he was like, it's pretty late. We've got an early show, got to be at the venue tomorrow by whatever, I can't remember whatever time it was. We'd better go to bed. So I was like, oh, okay. We got in the lift. He pressed one button and I pressed another. And he was like, where are you going? And I was like, by then, the lift had gone up to my floor. And it's like, going to bed. Good night. I'll see you tomorrow. Got out the lift and left him. So we all know what he was trying to do. And I've got to point out that this guy and I are friends now. We were after the first week. It was just a bit of like, that wasn't supposed to happen in his eyes. And I didn't know what his intention was. Anyway, the next day, I went straight to the venue. And I'm sat in the corner and nobody spoke to me. Nobody. And I'm thinking, this is so boring. How could anybody ever do work in the music? Like, why would you? It's just like cold, it's damp, it's pushing boxes around. It's like, ugh, this is awful. And I sat there till 5:30. And at 5:30, this one guy was like, where's the merchandiser? And she had an accident they used to sell a lot of pin badges in those days. And they were in bags of like 100. and you stick your hand in to get one out, and you often got, yeah. And she had done, but where she'd been pricked was like in her wrist, and it had started to go black. So she was in the hospital, and there was nobody to sell t-shirts. So this he just went, "Can you sell stuff?" And I was like, "Well, yeah." He said, "Well, I'll show you how much everything is, and just sell the t-shirts for us tonight." And that's what I did. And I did that for the rest of the tour. Came home thinking I've just had the best time of my life. Got home and had a phone call. The next minute it was like, "Do you want to go on tour with Rush to Europe?" And that was it. That was the start of my merchandising career.
Well, you mentioned when you first started with Elvis Costello The Attractions, you thought, this is boring. Why would anybody want to do this? When was the point when you knew, like, this is what I want to do?
Um, that very first week,
Oh,
suddenly,
really?
yeah, suddenly, I mean, it's back having my very first backstage pass. It was the most amazing feeling ever. It was just like, wow, this pass enables me to, and you've got to remember how old I was. I was 18, and I was just about to become 19. And at that age, I was just so, this was something no dreams were made of. I was with this famous band that everybody knew and everybody was into, and I could get backstage and I could go where people couldn't. And it was such a buzz. It was an unexplainable buzz, to be honest. And I in my second tour with Rush going to Europe, I was going to places that I would never have been able to. I couldn't have. My mom couldn't afford to take me to. I by the end of my first couple of years, I knew every city in Europe. I could wander around every city in Europe. It was like I was this. I'd had this amazing time going on holiday to these places, but I knew them all, and it was just so amazing that I had this job that enabled me to travel the world and do stuff that nobody else could. I stayed in five-star hotels. I traveled in luxury. We were allowed to go places as a band that other people weren't. You get on a plane and you'd be invited to the plane. You were taken to rooms that, lounges that people weren't allowed into. You were just treated like a megastar. But on the other hand, I could walk down the road and nobody knew who I was. So I had the amazing of having both sides of it, living the life of a famous person, but without the fame, which was fantastic. It was just wonderful.
You mentioned you grew up in a quiet village in the north of England. Did you think
Yeah.
you were always like this job allowed you to travel the world, like you said? Were you always determined to get out of the quiet village and go live life like
Yes.
elsewhere?
I knew that the opportunities for girls in that village were very far a few between. I mean, like I said, you became a secretary or you worked in the local spa shop. You know, those were the job. Or you could travel into Southport or Preston, get a job in one of the shops in Southport, Preston, and I guess you got married and you had children. And that was it. That was the life of a woman in that particular time. So just the fact of, I mean, it sounds like I was boasting at the time, and I probably was for my age, but to come home and go like, I've just been to such a place, and it was like, whoa, how did you, like manage that? And yeah, so it was kind of like that. So, but it was just, yeah, I dread to think of the opportunity if I hadn't have done it, you know, yeah, not dread, but it just wouldn't have been my life for me.
What was that European tour like with Rush then, your second tour?
It was scary because suddenly I was not there through my own choice. I was getting paid. This was a job. So again, I was learning from the bottom, completely the bottom, knew nothing about it, just the fact of having to sell stuff. but I didn't realize that everything else that went with it. I didn't realize getting from A to B, we had to work out that. I didn't realize that we had to keep stock takes of things and then go and collect things if we'd running out, and I didn't even know who Rush was. I had
Really?
no idea who Rush were. And I had to go. My One of my friends, her brother, loved Rush, and when I was just talking to her just before I went, and just saying like I'm going on tour with this band called Rush. No, not, and she was like, "Yeah, oh, so and so he loves Rush." So it was like spoke to him, and he played me their songs, and I was like, "Oh my." This is like, whoa, like Geddy Lee's voice and stuff. I was like, is that a male or a female? It was like that type of thing. So it was just totally new to me. But they were such nice people. Such nice people.
Well, I've heard you
Yeah.
say before, you'd say what genres you were into to like the management, and they wouldn't put you with a band from that genre. Like, it'd go with bands you didn't like. Uh,
Yes.
would you say that's better to not work with bands that you like?
Yes. Yeah. Because it's not a case of not, it wasn't at the beginning, because there isn't any band that I've ever worked for that I can't say there wasn't one song or something within that show that didn't stand out to me or that I didn't like. Because when people ask me now what I'm into, I just go music, because I can listen to anything from country and west. It depends what the song means to me. So obviously, touring with all these different people, there are certain songs that I go, that reminds me of this tour, or that was amazing when they did this at such a place. So that happens. So I guess now I love all the music, but back when I first started, the manager of a lot of bands, and he also owned part of the merchandising company, talked to me and asked me what kind of music you into. And he looked after the Damned as well. So as well as other people. So I was like, I love punk music. I love it. And he was like, okay, that's great. I was like, I really want to go on tour with the Damned. I really want to do that. It's like, okay. And what about Motorhead? I'm like, oh God, no, they scare me to death. So just the look at them, with their long hair and scruffy hair, I was like, no, absolutely not. It's like, okay. So you're gonna go on tour with Motorhead? No. And you know what? It was the best thing ever, because I he was actually looking after the girls. I mean, again, this is quite sexist, because he always said, who better to sell merchandise than a blonde and a brunette? You know, perfect. And I happened to be the brunette, the other girl was the blonde. And it was like, so we were on tour, but we were with people that we would never even, it wasn't Steve Naive. Let's put it that way. It was something completely different that I was like, no, no, they do not appeal to me whatsoever. That I wouldn't swoon over them or anything like that. I'd be running in the opposite direction. And at the end of the day, you were there to work.
Yeah, yeah. Mm.
And it was a way of protecting us too, because it was a protection of, which we didn't really realize, so it was good in that way. But I mean, you put the Ace of Spades on now, and I love it.
Yeah, memories and stuff.
Yes, exactly, exactly.
Speaking of Motorhead and Lemmy, they have got that scary image. Would you see a different side to these bands when you're on the road with them 24/7?
Absolutely. Um, in the book, I mentioned the first time I met Lemmy when he tied me up in a straitjacket. You know, so that was my first meeting of him, and the fact that I had to then get on a tour bus a few months later as the only female there, you know, I was petrified. So I remember getting on the tour bus and sitting in this seat and thinking, I'll just sleep here. I didn't even know that, there was a bunk there for me or anything like that. I didn't even want to ask. I just thought, if I just sit here, shut up, be quiet, I'll sleep in the corner. Nobody will know I'm here, and it'll be fine. Put a cover over my head, and I won't be able to see anything. And he just said, do you like movies? And I'm like, yeah, why? And he said, have you seen Excalibur yet? Because that was the movie at the time that was out. And I was like, no, I haven't. He's like, I'll put it on for you. So he did. He put, like, that was my first introduction to him. And then he was like, do you know where your bunk is? And I'm like, no. So he showed me where there were free bunks. And he said, I'd take the bottom one if I were you. He said women should always sleep on the bottom one. So which was good advice. But there was the smell of the feet. That was the only thing I remember. The smell of when people have had trainers on or boots on for 18 hours a day, 20 hours a day. Then it's like, so I used to spray my curtain of my bunk with perfume. So I got that. And there was no Febreze at that point, so it was like, it was disgusting. And then one of my favorite memories of Lemmy was he loved cheese, loved it. And the smellier the better. Same with Hawkwind and Dave Brock. He was a cheese lover. But I remember Lemmy at the back in the kitchen. There was this kitchen at the back of this one particular bus. And I got up one morning and he stood at the back. He is wearing his black t-shirt, nothing new with that. Black and white cowboy boots, nothing new about that. And a pair of Y fronts. Right. And he's making cheese and crackers. And it was like, it was just something, that image, is just completely different than most people have ever seen of him. And I loved that image of him because he was just like, try this cheese, try this one. And I'm like, no, I can't get that one near my nose. Just don't breathe it. Just put it in your mouth and taste it. He was a father figure in a way to me. And although he would never have admitted that, but he was. And with spending that long with him, I spent 10 years with them altogether. And yeah, he taught me everything I knew about touring. And the best part about it is that whenever I then toured with a new band as tour manager by them, I could say they try, especially younger bands, they try it on. They say things like, "Oh, let's see what we can get up to, and we'll show you what we can do," and all that. It's like, please don't. I worked for Motorhead for 10 years. There's nothing you can do that I haven't seen, and you're just going to look silly. It's like, please don't try it. You just make an idiot of yourself. So that helped me so much. Because I did see it all. But I learned from that. That was my school of training, everything that they did that was wrong, everything that they got up to, I take note of it and knew how it was handled. So later on, like I say, there was nothing that happened that I couldn't handle.
Yeah, you're kind of thrown in the deep end of Motorhead there, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
What are some of your favourite memories of Motorhead and Lemmy?
Um, well, this is in the book, but very quickly, it's like 18 hours worth of what happened, on a thing. Basically, we were sent to Sweden and Norway. We were doing Scandinavia in the summertime, where it didn't go dark. We were there for 6 weeks. Now, it's not a very big place when you think 6 weeks. So we were literally going from one small town to the next small. We were like overnighters of 10 miles. Nobody does overnighters of 10 miles, but no hotels would take us because of the reputation of them. So virtually every night was an overnighter. And we left this one particular venue and we had a ferry to catch, but that wasn't until 6:30 or something like that in the morning. So we had a few hours time. So the bus, it took off, we set off, and he just pulled into a lay-by outside, about a mile or so outside the ferry port, just to park up for a couple of hours. And Wurzel went into the woods to use the bathroom, basically, and just have a walk around. Because, like I said, it was broad daylight. And suddenly he comes running back to the tour bus. He's running. And it's like, what's he says, there's a bear. There's a bear chasing me. And there was, he'd seen these two baby bears and like, oh, how cute and everything. The mother came out of the woods and was just like, I'm coming after you. Got on the tour bus and we took off, literally, like with the doors open and he's hanging, like we just took off. Parked further down the road in another lay-by, which was by this nice little house, had a little lake by it and a rowing boat. Filthy Animal Taylor decided, let's go out on the rowing boat. Well, he did, but he only got it like 5 feet away from the jetty when it sank because he was like, messing about, and the boat sank. So he felt, Wurzel then felt really guilty. It's like, oh, guys, we shouldn't have done this. Poor guy, he probably lives in this house or comes for his weekends. It's his holiday home, and we've just sunk his boat. So there was a tractor in his garden with a lawnmower big attachment on the back of it. So Wurzel said, I'm going to finish his lawn off. He'd only done half of it. He said, I'm going to mow his grass for him because I feel so bad. So he started to mow the rest of his garden. Then the light went on in this house. Now, can you imagine waking up in the middle of the night, looking out of your window because there's a noise going on, and there's a bunch of guys with long hair and denim jackets and bullet belts and God knows what, and they're all in your back garden doing your gardening. I mean, the guy must have been like, either thought he was dreaming and went back to bed or just went and hid because he never did. He never called the police or anything. He was probably just in shock. And I actually don't think the police would have believed him anyway, what was going on. And the rest of us were raking up the grass cuttings, like Wurzel was mowing, we were raking up the grass cuttings. Now, the bus driver he got bitten all around his ankles by mosquitoes, and they swelled up so much. I mean, they were huge, and he couldn't put his feet down. And it's like we got him back to the bus, and he sat in the driver's seat. It was like, I can't press the pedals. It's like, I can't drive. What are we going to do? So we got two brushes that he used to clean the tour bus with, two long handle brushes. And it was like, tell us what to do. And we were like pressing the pedals. So it's like brake onto the brake, and like I said, we'd had about less than a mile at the most to go. And it just did it like a couple of miles an hour, very, very slowly. Got to the ferry port. But we missed the ferry. There's the ferry already set off, and there's nothing we can do about it. The next ferry was like at 6:30 that night, which was too late. So we hired a speedboat and we put what we needed on the speedboat because the trucks are everything, the equipment wise that had gone. So we just needed stuff. Took that with us, and the bus would come on later on the later ferry, and we would just make our own way to the venue on the other side. So we hired a speedboat. We strapped big speakers to the top of this speedboat, and it was just amazing because we just went across this fjord in this speedboat with music blazing out. Now, you're probably going to say, what kind of music was it? It was Frankie Goes to Hollywood, right? So, because we listened to all kinds of stuff, and that was part of Motorhead too, because they would. And so we had that blazing out, and we're going across this fjord, and obviously we're not going in a straight line. The guys playing on this speedboat, and suddenly out of the bottom of this fjord comes a submarine, and it's a Russian submarine. So it was obviously on spying something or other there, and all the guys came out onto the top of the submarine because they couldn't believe what was going on. So then we're playing with this Russian submarine going round and round it. And so, like come and get us or whatever. And it was just, yeah, it was just madness, the whole thing. But like saying that was in less than 18 hours, I suppose, in a day. So it was amazing what could happen.
Well,
You just get up in the morning and you think to yourself, what's going to happen today before I get to go back to bed?
well, you mentioned about the book. When you're
Yeah.
writing like these, this is a book here, brilliant book by the way. But when you're writing like these stories back down that you've experienced, is it pretty surreal for you?
Yeah. Yeah. It was, I didn't realize how much I'd actually done and how amazing my life has been and and opportunities I've had from people and and what I have learned now that I'm older so much from it is don't be afraid. No, never be afraid to just try something because you just don't know what's going to happen. I mean, very quickly going on that Rush tour, I was so scared. I was petrified. And in my head, I was getting the train down to London. I got on the train, and as I'm getting closer to London, I'm thinking, why am I doing this? The nerves really. I'm scared. I'm really scared. And at one point, I was saying to myself, it's okay. There's a train back to Preston in an hour's time. And I'll just get off this train. I'll phone them up saying, I really can't, I'm not coming. And I'll just go back home. And we're going into Euston Station. And in those days, you can't see it anymore because I tried, well, every time I went to London, I looked for this. There was a pub, and on the side of this pub, it was advertising a beer, and in huge, huge brick letters that was in the building, it just said Courage. It was Courage Beers, basically. And it was, to me, it was a point that was just like, yeah, courage. If I go, I don't know what's going to happen. But if I don't go, the thing that will happen is nothing. And I can't deal with nothing. So I have to go. I have to take the courage and I have to go. So yeah, so it's just having the courage to do things that are out of your comfort zone.
It's
Yeah.
crazy how life's made up of decisions and fate and stuff in it. Like if you didn't get all that, if you got the train back, you don't know where your life would have gone.
No. I probably would have ended up in a shop. My grandma and grandfather had market stalls. So I probably would have ended up working on the market stalls, and I just, yeah, who knows how it would have gone or where it would have gone. And it's fascinating because even when I, like say, I'd look back and I've got all the itineraries and all the notes and stuff that I put on the itineraries and things come back to you, and little bits of diary bits going, I hated today. Today was awful, just like something like that. And then you'd look back at it and go, no, it wasn't. It was hard work, but it wasn't awful, you know. And just the stories that came from it, that yeah, the opportunities that I had were just absolutely amazing and incredible. And we seem to have got away with so much. I must admit, we like when I like say when I first read it back, and I was like, did we really do that? Did we really get away with that? Did nobody stop us from doing this? So yeah, yeah, it's amazing. It's been amazing.
I bet you're glad there weren't phones and social media back then.
Yes, yeah. I mean, personally, I'm of that age group that I can't understand anybody spending that much time, like on a phone. Um, it was hard enough learning how to use a computer back in the day. I mean, there's another quick story about computers when I was working for EMI at the time, and that was when I was troubleshooting. But they used to call it troubleshooting because they didn't have a word for it. Now it's called crisis management. But it was when somebody was having a hard or something was wrong with a tour and they were trying to fix it before the tour fell apart. And it could be many many reasons, all kinds of stuff. So I was doing that for EMI, and they decided everybody has to have a computer, and I'm like, well, and we didn't have to buy them, but everybody had to have one. So I remember walking into the local, back again in Hesketh Bank, going down the road to it was Longton, it was just a couple of miles away, another village, and they had a computer shop. And I walked in and I said, I need this, I need a computer. So they're getting out these basic ones. I'm like, yeah, no, apparently you have to have an Apple, blah, 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 whatever it was back then. I can't even remember. And so the guy's eyes were like ka-ching, because it was the Ferrari of, I didn't want the Mini, I wanted the Ferrari. And he was like, okay, will this be in payment? So I said, no, 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 no. I've got a credit card, I'm paying for it outright. So then again, it was like ching, got the computer and I was like, oh, right, before I leave, can you just show me how to turn it on? So that he's like, I can't believe this, I've got to teach you how to turn this thing on. And so he showed me and I was like, then what do I do with it? And he was like, well, you need to come back and have some lessons, because I was like, okay. He said, but I'll teach you how to play solitaire. I was like, okay. So he taught me how to, and I left. And then I went, the next day I was on tour. And I got to this room and there was, on this particular tour, and the tour manager was there. The promoter was there. The promoter's agent assistant was there. There was another guy from EMI. And there was all these, it was this 12-foot long table, a huge table backstage. And they're all sat round and they've all got their brand new computers out and they're all going, like this. And I'm thinking, oh my, I felt so out of my depth, so I thought I'll get mine out. So got mine out, remembered how to turn it on. And I just thought I'll just play solitaire and nobody will know that I'm not doing anything on it. And then, we got to know each other during the day and stuff and things went on. And at the end of that night, when we finished and we all went back to the hotel, people had a few drinks and it was like, so, and then they went, do you like these computers? I'm like, and then other people going like, it's taking ages to get used to them. And they were laughing about the amount of money that was actually on that table that day. There was like £15,000 worth of computers, just or even more, on that table. And I just said, well, do you know what? I said, I only learned how to turn mine on yesterday. And somebody else went, so did I. He said, but you were on it doing all kinds of things. And I was like, I was playing solitaire. Then this other guy was like, so was I. And somebody else was like, so was I. And we're all sat around trying to be so efficient and we're all playing solitaire, So social media to me is one of those. I just can't get my head around it. And now I've decided that I mean I look at it, I do bits and pieces, but it's just different. And it for stars are now it's changed a lot of things because you are in the public eye 24/7. Somebody will be there with a phone sometime taking photographs or something of you. So it's always something for tour managers or things to be aware of, that you probably can't get away with half the things that we did.
When Motorhead are doing your garden, that's going to be fine. That guy had filmed it instead of going back in.
Absolutely, absolutely. But like I said, the poor guy was probably scared to death. Thought he was dreaming or something, because it was just. Like guys with cowboy boots and jeans on, leather jackets and bullet belts, cowboy hats on and stuff in his back garden. I mean, you'd expect them to be raiding you or, robbing you or something, but not mowing your lawn. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, when you started working on the merchandise, was she called Eve, the woman that ran the merchandise management?
Yes.
Yeah. What do you think it was about your characteristics that made her keep ringing you to go on tours?
Probably because the careers officer was right. I was good at selling. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I've never been asked that question before, so that's a really good one. I guess it was I was because I was very young, I was very honest to begin with. You know, I was like, she'd call up the next day and go, right, okay, what are the figures for last night? And I'd go, I haven't got a clue. We were so drunk last night, I have no idea. Or I'd go like, I was so tired that I didn't have time to do this. And she'd be like, she'd go nuts, the fact that no, it hadn't been done. But at least somebody was going, this is the reason why. Or so she wouldn't get the BS that somebody else probably told them about, you know, in the past that, oh, we couldn't do it because of this, that, and the other. I was just completely like, no, honest about, you know, because of my age. Yeah. I was just naive and everything and just would blurt it out, the reasons why that other people would be like, don't tell her that.
Like you said before, it was a very manly environment. Like there weren't many women involved. Did you always feel you had to be at like 110% and proving yourself all the time as a woman?
Yes, absolutely. A couple of weeks ago, I was asked a question by somebody, a student actually, and they said, name me a mistake that you made so we learn from it. And I thought that's a good one. And I went, I didn't. And I thought, oh my gosh, I didn't make any mistakes. Yeah, I did, but I was so constantly thinking all the time that I couldn't make a mistake. I'd go out on tour and there'd always be somebody. There always is. There's always somebody that wants to be the tour manager. Always. You know, whatever, male, whoever. I mean, it's the job to have when you're out on the road. It's the big one. And the buck stops with you. If there's anything wrong, it's your fault. So I constantly was aware of that. And I think more aware because I was female and because I was one of the first that, you know, it would shock a lot of people when you turn up at a venue, especially with the name of Kim, because then Kim in America is a male name. The way mine's spelled is predominantly male. And so they would even say to me, I'd go in and go, hi, my name's Kim. I'm the tour manager. And they go, okay, Kim, right. So what time does Kim arrive? I'm like, no, that's me. You know, it's like, okay. Is Kim here yet? You know, I'm like, no, that's me. You know, the amount of times that I'd have to go turn around and it's just like, no, I'm Kim. This is me. And I, you know, and everything. And they'd like, right, okay. You know, as if quite condescending in a way, sort of waiting for Kim to arrive. So I was always conscious of it. I would say that women now don't have to be because there's far more around now. And the reason why I wrote the book in the first place was because I was angry, I guess, at some women because they were saying there are no women that do this. And it made me hurt. Well, angry at first because I was like, yeah, hold on a minute. If I can do it in 1979 and go on tour, this is 2015, 2020. You can do it now. You know, so I was angry. So I wrote that. And then I thought, why am I being so angry? You know, just encourage whoever. Doesn't matter, male, female, what gender you are, trans, whatever. You can still do it. You know, if I did it in 1979, you can do it now. It doesn't matter who you are or what you are. It doesn't matter. And so I'm less angry now.
I've got some questions about the band you worked with.
Yeah.
Who was the funniest band you worked with?
Well, funniest. I've got to say Motorhead. I have because because I know I keep mentioning them, but you know, like there's a game that they played. This is in the book. You've read this. It's about the dance of the flaming assholes.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I mean, like who? And that was a drummer that we had named Pete Gill, and he made this game up, and who on earth would want to play it? I'll let people read the book and get this story because it's just crazy.
Yeah.
Like toilet paper, fire, and as the title of the game says, dance to the flaming arseholes. Put it all together with a crazy band like that, and it's madness.
Yeah,
So
like
yeah, and Lemmy was hilarious, and I think looking back on the things that we did, I just yeah, they are hilarious, and they are the things that you think, did we really do that? Was that for real? Yeah.
yeah, it's
So
crazy.
I have to say them. I do.
Who were the biggest divas?
They all are. And and to me, okay, I always say that for somebody to get up on a stage and perform with everything that goes on for a few hours before that, the nerves and everything else, you've got to have something about you. And I've always said there are three stages of touring. The first stage, and this is for everybody, anybody working on stage, backstage, whatever, but there are three stages. First stage is being so excited to be there in the first place. So this is great fun. This is amazing. The second stage, and I've been through them all too, so I'm not denying that they're not there, is when you suddenly become this person that is better than anybody else because you're there. Like I said earlier, you've got that backstage pass on and you can do whatever you like. So I'm going to get snotty about this. I'm going to be like a diva. I want this. I want that. Only because you can. And it does it plays with you. It's a mind thing. You can think to yourself, I want to drink, but I'm not going to queue up because don't you know who I am? And so I'm going to go to the front of the queue. I'm going to do that, and everybody goes through it. Everybody. Then there's the third stage, is when you come out of that and you then laugh at the people that are being snotty and assholes. So yeah, I would say everybody has some time has been a diva on or off stage. The hardest, well, not the hardest, the easiest way to deal with them is to know that, is to know the fact that they are in that second stage, and it doesn't matter what's going on, you can't change it. You just have to realize that it's just a phase and they'll snap out of it.
You mentioned before when you started with Elvis Costello, your mum was like a big person for you. Like she was what would you say?
My rock.
Yeah, you rock. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you come off of a tour, is it important to have somebody there like that when you come out of the bubble of touring and the egos and everything?
Yes, I think so. Um, it was she was my rock. She stood by me because imagine a single mother talking about their daughter who's just gone on tour and run off with a rock group, because that's what it sounded like to everybody else around her. It's like, your daughter's a groupie. Are you not scared for your daughter? She's run off with a rock band, and and the times were different. She couldn't pick up her phone and call me. She couldn't do any of that. So it was literally, I would go away and not be able to talk to her for weeks on end until I got back home. And so she had the trust in me um to do that. She stood by me through thick and thin when there was bad times, when I mean, like I dabbled in things that I shouldn't have done, but I came out the other end. Um I I mean, for instance, I couldn't understand how people that were older than me could not go to sleep at night. how did they manage to stay awake? You know, what was wrong with me that I'm younger? I'm supposed to be more alert, more wide awake, and I'm falling asleep, but they're still up and going. You know, I didn't understand any of that. And obviously, it was the drugs and things that kept them going, which I was unaware of. So she was there when I went through that stage and helped me out the other side. She was there after I had my daughter. She took care of her when I went away, but I didn't go away as often then. I just went for like days at a time because I was troubleshooting then. So that bit was different. And yeah, she was amazing. The fact that, like I said, she probably put up with so much. And because I can imagine, you can imagine it, you know, it's like the 70s, the 80s. And what, you know, people say tonight, like, what's your son doing? What's your daughter doing? Oh, my daughter's off on, yeah. Even now, it might be a bit of a, oh, okay. She's one of those then, is she? So yeah, but she stood by me the whole time. Yeah,
Yeah, that's
and
good.
was quite proud. She actually had a conversation with Lemmy once,
Really?
you know, on the phone. Yeah, you know, and so yeah, it was just yeah, she was an amazing woman, and yeah, amazing.
Yeah, good.
Best mom that I could have had.
Well, you mentioned that this all started from a lie to a tour manager, like your whole
Yeah.
career. Uh, did you see when you became tour manager, people trying it on with you and trying to get backstage and stuff?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. The best one was the clairvoyant.
Did you see the
A
book of it?
clairvoyant. Yeah,
Yeah, I do
yeah.
remember that. Yeah,
He was at the backstage and he was like, and he's like, "Hi, my name's, you know, I can't even remember what his name was, but it was one of those introduction things. Are you with the band?" I was like, "Well, yeah." He's like, "Okay, only I really need to speak to Jeanette." It was the singer from Concrete Blonde. I'm like, "Okay, why?" It's like, "Well, I'm a clairvoyant, and I want to, you know, I want to talk to her about the future and what's going on." I was like, "Okay." So and then he said, "So could you tell me who the tour manager is?"
yeah.
And I just turned around and I was like, "You're not a damn good clairvoyant if you don't know who the tour manager is." And I just like walked away from him because it was like, you were just talking to them, but yeah, you're obviously not that good. So no, I'm not going to take you back. There, there were times when we've had girls, obviously, and some men throwing themselves at particular bands, you know, absolutely, yeah. Um, it's everybody would say it's usually the star or whoever, you know, instigates things, but it comes from the other side too. You know, it's the audiences and stuff. We've had times when, you know, they women have just stripped naked in front of people just to, yeah, you know, so you had all of that, or just the different things that, yeah, anybody could ever think of, but
Yeah.
nobody ever did, except that's a lie. Actually, there was once, and that was when a bouncer, it was Chumbawamba, and a bouncer actually let a guy through, um, supposedly to interview them, but the guy wasn't even a journalist, you know, and that's the only time that that happened. And it was, and yeah, he got fired. The guy on the door, the security guy, got fired because of the fact that he let somebody through that didn't even have a press pass,
It
but
could
had
have been
blagged his way
anybody,
through.
could it? Could have been a lunatic,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, I went in there. Luckily, he'd only been in there for about 5 minutes. And I think it was Dunstan Bruce that pointed out the fact it's like, this guy's not a journalist. Deal with it. And I took him to one side and he wasn't. It's like, how the hell did he get in?
What
And I just,
What was he doing then? Was he a fan? He just wanted to get there as a fan.
yeah, he's just a fan and just wanted to hang out, you know, but had got through the guy on the security guy on the stage, at the side of the stage, as part of being press, and he wasn't. So, you can have the best people in the world trying to stop people, but sometimes they just slip through the net.
Yeah, exactly.
But
Yeah.
it's catching the ones to have.
what what's a band that you wish you'd have worked with?
I wish I'd worked with. Oh, I guess I would have liked to have done something at Live Aid, which is very quite poignant now. But we were in Sweden. Like I said, we were shipped off and in Sweden that day. So I think they might have done that on purpose, looking back. um, so that, but um, I don't, I don't know really because, I mean, I met everybody who I'd ever wanted to meet. I mean, my idol was David Bowie, and I met him. Um, so working for them, yeah, I don't think that I don't think there is anybody because it's a case of never meet your heroes anyway,
I was
you
going to say
know?
it's different for you because, like, as fans, we see him as gods and stuff. But like you said before, seeing Lemmy eating cheese in his underwear, like, it's different, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a story in the book when I met Bowie. Um, he was sat on a sofa. I was introduced to him. He stood up. I shook his hand. I'm not I'm not that tall. I'm 5'4" or 5'3 3/4. I like to say 5'4". So I'm not that tall. And instead of doing that, looking up to him, I did that straight across. And to me, he was this thin white duke on a pedestal. And suddenly he was just a man in front of me, and he wasn't that tall. And all my illusions and everything about him went out the window. So you never, yeah, should never meet your heroes. And I've met a lot of people, and so if I would say who would I like to have worked for who haven't, I guess there isn't because I met them anyway, and
Yeah.
sometimes it's not as grand and exciting as it seems.
Is there a song that takes you back to your days on the road with any band, any time?
Yes, I've got there's like a few songs. Is that what you said? Songs?
Yeah, songs.
Yeah, yeah. Basically, there's things like I've got the music in you in me. That I love that one because that is just what it is to me. There are um there's quite a lot actually that I can relate to, especially songs that are about people that are touring.
Yeah.
So there are those. And then, like I said before, there are songs from bands that I would never dream of. But as soon as I listen to the intro, I'm like, wow, that brings back that memory. So there are those. So I never listen to one particular type of music. Um, I listen to everything: classical, opera, country and western, hard rock, thrash. Everything.
Is
Yeah.
is there a favourite gig that you worked that you enjoyed the most?
Yes, absolutely. The Greek in Los Angeles, the most organized um, place I've ever been to, the nicest people. It did help because it was the last day of our tour, so that always makes a difference. Like if you're doing your last gig, and it was strange because a lot of bands hate playing certain venues, hate it. Well, not venues, cities. They hate the cities. And they're usually the big cities, the capitals of certain places. Like in America, it's always bands hated playing New York and they hated playing Los Angeles because there's so much scrutiny on them. Everybody that's anybody is there. They're watching for any mistake that's made. They're watching for anything they do wrong. And everybody's aware of that. So tensions are really high. And the Greek was like a day off. The night that we played there, one night, it was just so well organized that it was like I didn't have to do anything. It was just so well done, and that is one that sticks out completely for me.
Good. I've just realised we never mentioned Black Sabbath. What were they like to work with?
Black Sabbath, I actually, when I first met them, I was rolling posters because like as the youngster in the merchandising, you were given the shit jobs. Let's be honest. When you start any job, you are always given the worst jobs. So I'm on the floor rolling posters. Now, it was horrendous because they're usually concrete cold floors. You're on your hands and knees, and you're just rolling these paper things. You've got paper cuts all over your fingers, and you roll them up and you stick an elastic band around them. And I was doing that. And these two guys walked in the venue. One was Tony Iommi, the other was Geezer Butler. And they walked up to the doors that went into the auditorium. And I was like, hello, excuse me. And they just looked at me. It's like, can't get in there. And as it was, they couldn't because the doors were locked. So they was like, oh, right, okay. And then I stood up and I went over to them and said, in fact, you shouldn't even be in the building. And they just looked at me and like, who is it? Who is this? And I said, I'm going to have to show you where the exit is. And I walked them outside, but they actually, they followed and they did what I said because they just found it hilarious that this young kid had just gone, you're not allowed in here. Well, you haven't got a pass. I think I even asked them if they got a backstage pass, because I had no idea who they were. So that was yeah, very amusing. And then when I found out afterwards, yeah, I was a bit embarrassed, to say the least.
So just to bring us to the current day, really, what are you up to these days?
Okay, so I have found that a few years ago, I mean, I do the occasional talk and stuff like that now. And a few years ago, I was asked to do a panel, and it was people that had suffered mentally, that had had a hard time on tour and things like that, and they wanted to talk about it. And what it occurred to me that what was I going to do now? I mean, I retired in 2000, around 2013 to take care of my mum when she became sick. And that I took care of her until 2017 when she passed away. And then I was aware that, like, okay, I've got this void now to fill. What do I do? I didn't want to go back on tour. I knew that. Because like my age for one, and I just think I was capable of doing it. And I thought, but there has to be something more out there. And after doing this panel with these people, I realized that maybe I had been part of the effects that it had had on people, mental health wise, that I had become, especially when I was troubleshooting crisis management, I was the person that got them on that stage no matter what. As a tour manager, I made people perform even if they didn't want to. I we didn't take care of them. The most important thing was the show. Nothing else mattered. I didn't care if you were crying because your boyfriend or your girlfriend had just split up with you or something like that was going on at home. That was irrelevant. I just needed to have that show happen. And so I've been part of this regime of doing this. And I thought, now it's time to turn that around. And let's look at how we can help and work with people, in mental health wise. So I went back to college. I went back to university. I finished in this year in May, and I'll have a degree in mental health and well-being coaching because I feel that with my experience There is nobody that's got 40 years of experience that is now going into something like that. So I feel that I could be one of the most qualified people out there. And let's just look at things that we have been guilty of and try and change them. I think we've also been guilty in the fact that we've got so obsessed with all these schools, you know. I want to go to university because I want to be a star. You can go to university and people can say that this is how you do it, but it doesn't mean to say that you're going to walk out with a degree in 3 years' time and you're going to be a star, you know. So we've got a whole load of people that have gone through that too, you know, and been tossed aside because they're not that flavor of the month. Because I think a lot of people don't realize too that when you are when record companies or managers or something are looking for certain things, they know what they're looking for. And if you don't fall into that category, then it doesn't matter how good you are, you're not going to make it. You know, it just depends on, so it's not just the fact of being good at playing an instrument or good at singing or something like that. There's a lot more goes into it. So it doesn't always work. And those people are tossed aside as well. And the thing I want to help with them is, look, I can't sing or play a musical instrument, but I worked in an industry for 40 years and you wouldn't do that if you were just a star. You know, you wouldn't get that amount of time out of it. And then there's this generation now, I feel, that have come because of various things going on with social media, that they think it's an overnight success. That today they might have 10p in their pocket. Tomorrow I could have 10 million. You know, it's like this overnight quick, everything's quick. But in music, the average is 8 years to become an overnight success. You know, so that is something that again needs to be talked about and needs to be, you know, we need to learn from mistakes that we've made in the past. And so that's my intention. So from next year I shall be from May next year I shall be a qualified coach in mental health and well-being, and I want to specialize in music.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
So
That's a good thing that you're doing. Yeah, yeah.
thank you. So yeah, and hopefully help people.
Yeah, good. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's like what you've been doing all your life, really, helping people on tour and stuff, though, as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, like I say, it's the troubleshooting days were what taught me this. Was like you don't have to be. I mean, okay, there were certain things like, for instance, um, George Michael and Prince, you know, falling out with the record companies and all this sort of thing, and being told what they had to do and stuff. But the people I work with, we always found a way that they were able to fulfill their contracts, but without giving up too much. You know, we made it a joint effort so both could be fulfilled with whichever direction they were going in. Yeah. And so I think that's the other way to look at it. You know, it's like and then some people might think that they want fame and fortune, but in actual fact, it's not all, you know, there are things that go with that. I mean, I think Simon Cowell a couple of weeks ago, after the sadness of Liam Payne from Direction, you know, it was like, you can't have it all. You can't have on one side, you know, the admiration of all these young girls and everything going on and everything and all this excitement without having the other side that goes with it. You know, they both, you can't have one without the other. And I think a lot of people don't realize that either. So it's coming to that understanding that, you know, there's two sides to everything.
Yeah, exactly. It can be a dark thing, fame, can't it?
Yeah, yeah.
But it's been great to speak to you, though. The book's here, Lipstick and Leather. A brilliant book. If anybody wants to check it out, I'll leave a link in the description for you.
Thank
Uh,
you.
but yeah, thank you, Kim, for joining me. It's been great to speak to you.
Thank you, Ethan. It was wonderful. Yeah, it was really good.
Nice
Thank
one.
you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. Take care. And yeah, let me know how it goes.
Thank you. I will do. Yeah. Thank you.
Keep in touch. All right.
Yeah, will
Thanks.
do.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.